It's now well known that Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth. In this video, we'll explore its hiking trails, what makes it unlike any other, and why it's so damn hot. Come join me. The two closest major cities you'll find to the park are Los Angeles and Las Vegas. You're looking at least a 5-hour drive from Los Angeles to Furnace Creek, but I highly recommend you take the 395 up to Lone Pine, as this is often rated as the best highway drive in all the country. You get to see massive panoramic views of the Sierra Nevadas and Mount Whitney in all their glory. Once I arrived in Lone Pine, I was thinking, this is probably a whole trip for itself. Which it usually is, because people will come into Lone Pine to hike up to Mount Whitney. If you're coming in from Vegas, it's under 2.5 hours, and it's a completely different kind of road trip. The scenery is just as spectacular as driving in from LA, and you must not miss the Area 51 Alien Center outside the Amargosa Valley. This place really captures the spirit of Nevada. As you're coming from Lone Pine in the west, the first key point you'll notice is what's known as the Star Wars Canyon. If you're a military or aviation nerd, then welcome home. This is a famous spot in the country where you can see all kinds of military aircraft literally flying below your feet through the canyon, if you're lucky, which I was not. Continuing on, you begin to descend down the mountain into the Panamint Valley, which is your first opportunity to find food, accommodation, and fuel, as well as where you'll begin to see sand dunes that look like they're floating in the sky, and the first of those big straight roads that look like they just go on forever. This right here is the Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes. They're unlike anything you'll ever see, and they're enclosed on all sides by huge rugged mountains. They're a spectacular place for sunrise and sunset photography, and has been a location in many Hollywood movies over the years. You'll notice the sand here is unlike beach sand, it's incredibly dry and fine. The dunes are here because the sediment from the surrounding mountains is taken by wind, and it ends up at the lowest part of the valley. Here, it has nowhere to escape, just like if you put cereal or food in a bowl. Because it has nowhere to escape, it ends up accumulating into these massive sand dunes that just spread right across the valley floor. It's also worth mentioning that this place is located right next to Stovepipe Wells, which is another busy stop for park accommodation, food, and refueling, which I highly recommend you do because, yeah, this place is vast. It's probably worth mentioning now, and especially in this place, that unless you want to literally fry to death, do not come here in summer. Come in the winter months and you'll actually enjoy being outside the car. Well, this spot right here is Badwater Basin, and this is the spot where you usually see the hexagonal salt flats, but today the lake is filled up. It's incredibly rare, and it only happens during winter, and it only happens a few times a year, if at that, and not for very long. This right here is the spot, the Badwater Basin, the hottest place on Earth. Although luckily for me, not today. The Badwater Basin is the lowest point on the North American continent. Standing right here is a surreal experience, and you may not realize it, but those snowy peaks in the distance, that's an alpine region, and this is the only place on Earth you can see one while standing on a salt flat below sea level. To see the sheer scale of Death Valley and the endless mountain ranges across the Mojave Desert, take the drive up to Dante's View. Up here, you're no longer in the desert. You're closer to Death Valley's alpine region. You do get an entire view of the desert below and can see how the water makes its way to Badwater Basin where it goes to evaporate, especially after a big rainstorm has come through. It is also a spot that does remind me that Death Valley is America's largest national park outside the state of Alaska. This makes visiting all the park in one trip impossible. I was here for 3 days and prioritized hiking, so I missed out on a lot. A lot of people come down just for the day, but if you really want to explore this park properly, you're going to need at least 3 to 4 nights minimum. The temperature up at Dante's View is significantly colder than the valley floor. There's a roughly 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit difference, so don't forget to bring jackets in the winter months. If I had to put my money on one single hike to do here in the park, it would be the Golden Canyon loop around Zabriskie Point. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the geology of how this place came to exist. Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth because of 2 key things: geology and geography. When we talk about geology, we talk about crustal extension, which is the Earth's crust literally being pulled apart like pizza dough. Death Valley happens to sit inside the Basin and Range province. It's a huge region across North America where the Earth's crust has been stretched apart to the east and to the west. When crust stretches, it breaks along these huge parallel fault lines, forming giant blocks. Some of these blocks will then rise up into mountain ranges, and others drop to form basins. This is why Badwater Basin sits below sea level, and the parallel mountains rise over 3,000 meters or 11,000 feet above. With this kind of physical geography, the mountains trap heat inside Badwater Basin where it can't escape, just like the sand can't escape from the Mesquite Flat dunes. The wild part is this is all happening today as we speak. The mountains are continuing to rise up while the valley continues to drop. Now back to the hike. This is the hike to do if you want to properly experience the Badlands. Badlands are called Badlands because they're essentially rocks and minerals that are inhospitable to holding soil or any life such as plants. The Badlands are made of layers of sediment laid down over time as volcanic material, mud sand, continues to pile up. We've spoken about geology and geography creating this place, but ironically, it's actually water that does the final touch. On the rare occasion rain arrives in the valley, it comes hard and fast. The ground can't soak it up quickly, so water rushes downhill through these canyons, carrying rocks, sand, and mud. This is how places like the Golden Canyon keeps getting carved and recarved by every new storm. The water then spills out of the canyon mouths onto the open valley floor. It drops everything it was carrying, building those huge fan-shaped spreads of gravel you see at the base of the mountains. It's kind of like a conveyor belt, but for the park. This place I'm hiking is what's known as the Mosaic Canyon. It's different to the Badlands because the rock here is much harder and there is rock scrambling in some sections of the hike. Along with being in the basin and range, it's the physical location of Death Valley that makes the Badlands and Salt Flats possible. Death Valley is the driest place on the continent because it sits in an extreme rain shadow. By the time the moist air from the Pacific Ocean has passed over the Sierra Nevadas and Panamint Ranges, it comes into the valley completely dry and void of any moisture. If you pair this with the fact that Death Valley is like a giant bowl where heat can't escape, you get the hottest place on Earth. You can just see huge amounts of water had to have passed through here in order to make this wide, open plain-like field. Death Valley isn't all just hiking. There is quite an extensive history of mining in the area, particularly for borax, where you can see old wagons and old mining ruins from the days when mining went on here. There's also the Borax Museum outside Furnace Creek, which can be a good activity to take a break from hiking. Furnace Creek is also home to the National Park Visitor Centre. You'll find all your information here about road closures, trails, park amenities, and you'll find your souvenirs. It's also a great place to learn about the park. And that was the end of my time in Death Valley. Next, I moved on to Joshua Tree. If you enjoy driving, particularly in the desert, this is the drive for you. From Death Valley, the drive to Joshua Tree takes you directly through the Mojave Desert National Preserve. It takes roughly 4.5 hours. It's incredibly wild, and you'll see even bigger dunes and wider open spaces. In my next video, I will be exploring Joshua Tree. Until then, stay safe and stay on the trails.